Have you ever been swallowed up?
Peace, peace, black people. It's your girl. I'm back at it once again. Good to be black in the land of the living. Welcome to your Mima's World of Jelly Moose's Cafe. I am your Mima, your host. And we are back at it again. We have a news story tonight. And I read on social media that another soul has been taken at Lake Lanier. So a man, quote unquote, accidentally drowned in Lake Lanier. It was a 73-year-old man, and I don't know if he was a melanated man or not. His name was Matthew Mayo. But you would think that after all of the things that have gone on in that area, that people would stop going. But no, no. Apparently, what happened was he was fishing, and according to authorities, somehow, his seat in his boat became unbolted and knocked him over into the lake. I'm gonna let y'all sit with that one. But for those, a lot of people don't know the history of Lake Lanier. They just know that it's haunted, quote unquote haunted. So let me give you some information. I'm going to read this because I don't want to leave anything out. So listen. So Forsyth County, Georgia, was the site for one of the most successful racial cleansing of a black community in American history. The European American history of the area starts in the 1800s, with the U.S. government forcing the Cherokee Nation, which led to the Trail of Tears, then the racial cleansing of a thriving black town, followed by the government claiming over 50,000 acres of land, displacing over hundreds of landowners and their families. Over 20 cemeteries were moved or submerged by the lake. Now, they'll only do this to black cemeteries. White cemeteries, they ain't not gonna pluck with. And the other cemeteries, I ain't gonna name it. But they dare not pluck with them. In the 1830s, the U.S. government expulsed most of its members from what would be one of the southeasternmost origins of the Trail of Tears. So that was the part in the southeast region where the Trail of Tears began. We fast forward 80 years. The year is now 1912. The land is now the state of Georgia. And an hour north of Atlanta is Forsyth County. And in Forsyth County, there was a black community with more than 1,100 African Americans, most who were freed after fighting in the American Civil War. They owned land, operated their own businesses, had their own churches and schools. Sounds like another Black Wall Street. When we think about Black Wall Street, we only think about Tulsa, but it was a whole lot of black communities that thrived just like Tulsa did. And all of them were erased, just like Tulsa was. The town was called Oscarville. Now, due to high racial tensions from the riots in Atlanta 6 years prior, many were wary of possible future violence. It was clear that in the early 1900s, blacks in Atlanta lived in constant fear of violence. It is clear that in today's time, blacks live in fear of future violence. For the small town of Oscarville, that fear would turn into brutal reality. All right, so there was an all-white neighboring town in Forsyth County called Cumming, because they was coming. The two towns were shared by the Chattahoochee River, and on September 5th, 1912, in Forsyth County, Georgia, 22-year-old Ellen Grice. Let me read that again. On September 5th, 1912, let me put my glasses on, Lord have mercy. On September 5th, 1912, in Forsyth County, Georgia, a 22-year-old Ellen Grice, a white resident, said she had awakened to a black man in her bed and that he attempted to rape her. Now, I wonder when she told somebody. Did she tell somebody after he finished, or did she tell somebody? Did somebody scare him off and she said, you know what, I need to tell somebody that this black man was in my bed? Did she tell somebody before she got to look at the package or after? All right, so days later, the Forsyth County Sheriff William Reed arrested 5 black men in connection with the case: Isaiah Perkle, Johnny Bates, Tony Howell, Fate Chester, and Joe Rogers. Tony Howell was actually the one accused of the crime, but the other man claimed he was with them at the time. All 5 men were put in jail in the Cumming Town Square. Word of this spread to the black community on September 7, 1912. A local pastor by the name of Grant Smith demanded the men be released. Soon after Smith was beaten by an angry white mob. The mob wanted Smith to be hung or burned alive. Now, why they want Smith to be hung? He had nothing to do with this. All he asked is that they set the men free. And they wanted Lord have mercy. The governor of Georgia, Joseph Mackey Brown, sent the National Guard in to prevent riots and transfer the men to multiple jails for safety. And they ended up being in an Atlanta jail. 2 days later, on September 9th, 1912, May Crow, she got the right last name, another white woman, 18 years old, was found on the banks of the Chattahoochee River, raped and murdered. 4 African Americans were arrested with only speculation and no substantial evidence. The first arrest was a 16-year-old boy, Ernest Knox, who was arrested at his home. Knox was then coerced into a confession by a prominent Cumming resident who mock lynched him with a rope from a nearby well. The 3 men, then 3 more arrests followed. Knox's cousin, 18-year-old Oscar Daniel, 22-year-old Trucy Jane Daniel, and 24-year-old Robert Edwards. Knox was snuck out the back door of the jail and transported to an Atlanta jail to await trial to avoid the lynch mob waiting for him. On September 10th, a lynch mob 2,000 people of 2,000 people formed. They stormed into the jail cell. They dragged Rob Edwards out. They brutally beat him and shot him multiple times, then hung his body on a telephone pole while people took turns shooting him. Not a single person was held accountable for the lynching, despite thousands of witnesses. Now, this was in 1912. On January 23rd, 2021, Robert Edwards was commemorated in downtown Cumming, Georgia. Black families who were forced to flee out of Forsyth County were present at the commemoration. The national leader in documenting the racial injustice and their partnership demonstrates Forsyth County's commitment to historical accuracy, context, and transparency. They wanted to increase awareness of the lynching of Rob Edwards and memorialize him, as well as the countless black families who were tortured, terrorized, and in some cases killed. And there are some descendants that are still alive. White mob known as the Night Riders raided the town of Oscarville, burning down their churches, their farms, and businesses. 98% of the black residents would end up leaving their homes or being murdered for refusal to move. In October, Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel were both found guilty of the rape and death of May Crow. The all-white jury took a little over an hour to convict Knox and Daniel for Crow's killing. Trustee Daniels' charges were dismissed after the prosecutor and judge visited her cell and cut a deal with her, telling her to testify against Daniel and Knox. Public execution is illegal in the state of Georgia. A tarp was put up to shield the hangings a day before the execution were to take place, but someone had burned down the tarp. Over 5,000 people gathered to watch the hanging of 16-year-old Ernest Knox and 18-year-old Oscar Daniel. With little to no evidence, many still believe the boys were innocent. In the 1920s and 30s, there was a forcing out of black people and mass transferring of their land by and to white people. The racial cleansing started with Oscarville, but didn't stop there. Parts of the stolen land would be sold to the U.S. government, and by 1950, a plan to build Lake Lanier was in full effect. Soon, the entire town of Oscarville would be underwater, intentionally flooded in conjunction with the Beaufort Dam to support the growing demand for a water supply to the nearby cities. The rest of Forsyth County was untouched and remained an all-white county for a few more decades. Thousands of acres of farmland destroyed, hundreds of families displaced, 20 black cemeteries submerged. During the Jim Crow era, Forsyth County didn't have the whites only and colored only signs because there were no black people to be segregated. The racial cleansing of Forsyth County happened in 1912, but didn't make national news until January 1987, when into Cumming, Georgia, about 15,000 to 20,000 civil rights marchers, many of them black, marched to the courthouse square of Forsyth County, where no blacks have lived for 75 years. The activists were met with violence. This is 1987. Residents were seen throwing rocks and yelling racial slurs at the civil rights activists. The march was led by civil rights leaders Coretta Scott King and Hosea Williams. Hosea Williams stated, "We've come back to Forsyth County today to prove that truth crushed to earth shall rise again." They sang the songs, "Before we will be your slaves, we'd rather be buried in our graves and go home to be with our God and to be free." The protest gained the attention of Oprah Winfrey Show, which had only been airing for 6 months. Oh, wow. Oprah invited only the residents of Forsyth to the show to discuss its history as well as the protests that were going on. The protests started to surround the building where the show was being held. Hosea Williams was arrested outside of the building. Inside the building, Oprah was the only person of color in the building as she interviewed residents on their views of why Forsyth should or shouldn't remain all white. Today, Forsyth County, Georgia, is the wealthiest county in Georgia. According to the census, the black community only makes up about 4.4% of their population. Whatever was left of Oscarville is at the bottom of Sydney Lake Lanier. So that's the history of Lake Lanier. We hear about it in the news all the time, and we casually joke about how people get killed. I believe Usher's ex-wife's son, I don't know if it was Usher's son or not, but his ex-wife's son died in Lake Lanier some years ago. But it doesn't seem to matter if you're white or black. Those tortured souls at the bottom of that lake, that town, all of that history, all of that evil history at the bottom of that lake. And people wonder why this country can't get right side up again, because we are totally upside down. And we will remain upside down until this country reckons with the evil that they have done to black people in this country. It is unmatched. There has never been another nation that has ever done for as long as it has been done to black people in this country. Nowhere. Nowhere. Never. This is the most evil country in the world. And if I didn't have family here, I would have moved. But my family depends on me to spiritually protect them. So that's the story of Oscarville. And yes, I truly believe, I don't want to say that it's haunted because I don't like that word haunted. They ain't haunting nobody. They're bringing awareness. And if the stories don't get told in truth, they're going to keep on bringing awareness. They're going to keep bringing souls or taking souls. If people don't start to really understand what Lake Lanier is, it's not just haunted by black people, by the spirits of black people, just because they were, because it was submerged. It's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. That area is riddled with evil. So, Mr. Matthew Mayo, I don't know what the hell you was thinking, bruh. I don't know why you thought that you could just go out there and, you know, have your way. But you're gonna learn today. You're gonna learn today. Y'all gonna learn eventually. All right, y'all. So that's it for me. I gotta get out of here. I just wanted to bring the story of Lake Lanier and Oscarville. I really want to bring the story of Oscarville. Damn a Lake Lanier, because that's their shit. So damn a Lake Lanier. I want you to bring the story of Oscarville and what happened in Oscarville. And now I have to go back and find the Oprah Winfrey Show because I want to watch that now to see what the response was. And I may do another episode on that. Until next time, look, love yourselves, love each other, give yourself grace, give some other folks some grace as well. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay black. Until next time, peace.